Okay, thank you. Welcome to our July meeting of the Marysville Education School Board and the July 25th. We've been in session and in executive session since 5 o'clock, so we're coming out of executive session, and at this point in time, we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. And now we need a motion to adopt the agenda for this evening.
So moved.
And a second?
I'll second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we're ready for a vote.
Ms. Savage?
Yes.
Mr. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Ferguson?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Keller?
Yes. And at this time, is there any no public participation? Okay. And right now, continuous improvement, we're going to move that toward the end of the meeting. So we're into the superintendent's report.
Perfect. Thank you. I wanted to give you a quick kindergarten enrollment. That's what we focus on in the summertime. So we are currently sitting at 33 alt-K students and 416 kindergarten students, which at this time last year we had 34 alt-K students and 413 regular students. So we're trending really in the same direction, but we do know that number will increase in August, so we're continuing to watch that. Currently in kindergarten at Naven, we have 10 students that will be in overflow status. So they will be going to Northwood, which is our overflow spot. So we're continuing to watch kindergarten numbers. I guess I would be remiss if I didn't remind everyone, I can't believe I'm saying this, but school's around the corner. Teachers come back on the 9th is their first day back. Convocation is on the 12th, so I'll be forwarding an agenda for that, and you're all invited to attend convocation. August 14th is freshman day, first day of school, and then August 15th, all grades kick in after that. So preschool and kindergarten start the next week. So we'll be at it in no time. We still have some vacant positions. We have a fourth grade Edgewood and a family consumer science at the high school. I do think that fourth grade position might be in good shape, maybe even by tomorrow. We just couldn't get it wrapped up by today. We had a very, very thin pool for family consumer science, so we're still searching in that area. We have 12 and a half classified positions across the district. Most of them are aide positions as well. And facilities planning, Jonathan is currently working with Tracy and the team to schedule site reviews. So that process is continuing as well. And that's all I have.
Okay. Todd, you have the treasurer's report?
I do. For our treasurer's report, we're going to go over the levy contingency plan, the resolution that's on the agenda tonight. If you guys want to bring that up. There we go. Okay, do you want to kick us off?
I can. So I think that all of us know, but I think it's important to continue to say that as we talk about contingency plan, there really is not a good contingency plan, because when you're talking about contingency plan, you're talking about our people and resources and opportunities for kids. So We're actually going to start the same way we're going to end, and we're going to remind everyone that there is no good contingency plan. You could probably substitute lots of things in and out of this plan, but it still would not be a good plan. So as we talk about our contingency plan, just a reminder, as you all know, we have a ballot issue on in the fall, in November. We met several months ago and talked about, okay, as we prepare for a contingency plan, what does that look like? And collectively, the decision was made that we would like to end FY28 with 1 month of operating expenses. And so our task then was to kind of present a menu of options for the board to consider that would leave us with $6.6 million at the end of FY28. Our ask for this fall would generate a little over $6.4 million. So our contingency plan needed to include 3.7 million in reductions in order to achieve 1 month of operating expense and meet the guidelines established by the board. So we've talked a lot about revenue and expenditures, and certainly when money gets tight, you have to look at both aspects of that. And when we look at our ask, we haven't had new operating levy pass since 2008. So, and our TPP revenues have declined during that time as well. So at this point, there is a need on the local side that we're lagging behind a bit. State funding and cuts, we've been able to sustain for quite some time. Expenditure per pupil for our district is a little over $2,400 below the state average. So also we have low staffing levels. So when we talk about expenditures and you talk about staffing, 92% of districts in Ohio have more teachers per student than Marysville, and 84% of districts in Ohio have more administrators per student than Marysville. So just evidence of a revenue issue that our expenditures are pretty lean. Local funding, we have the second lowest tax rate in Central Ohio, the 19th lowest tax effort in the state, so out of 606 districts. And our revenue per pupil is $5,000 below the average in the state. So that puts us in the bottom 2%. So when Todd and I often talk about the revenue challenge, that's really what we're talking about.
So this is a summary of the 5-year forecast, and rightfully so, we get questions about the large ending cash balance we have right now. So that green line shows that ending cash balance. The red and blue line shows revenues and expenditures, and that red line, the expenditure line, exceeds revenues, and by a growing amount year after year, which is why we're eating into that cash balance so quickly. And I guess the real point with this slide is that the sooner you can attack that decreasing ending cash balance, the better. We've stated many times that if we don't pass a levy this year and we have to wait until the year after, that ending cash balance goal that we're trying to hit, we would need to increase the levy ask by about $2.5 million. If that got pushed out another year, that levy number is going to grow, and you'd be looking at a double-digit millage number at that point. And then the other negative of kicking the can down the road is that not only is the levy getting higher, there's going to be a smaller amount of time in between levies as well. So you would also, be asking for a higher levy and then coming back for another levy much sooner.
So we've had We've had conversations with community members, and some of you have asked, okay, so what if we bring back, what if the win out of the levy would be to bring back cuts? Well, 5.5 ask of our community does not generate enough revenue to bring back our cuts. Those cuts were equal to a little over 2.2 million. If you remember, it was supplemental contracts, extracurricular field trips, 17 teacher positions, 8 support positions, and 1 administrative position. So that 2.25 is kind of, if you want to think of it as a historic loss. And we also know that we're still growing, right? So we can't achieve both of those fully with a 5.5 ask. Thank you. However, if the levy is approved, we do know that we'll get additional revenue through our new agreement with the city, with the new TIF agreement. So we'll be able to actualize the full benefit of a past property tax. For us, that would be about $900,000 a year. And so it does provide, with that additional revenue, to potentially reinstate some supplemental contracts, field trips, go back to our class sizes that we had previously. So it does create some flexibility that way, just not the amount we would need to bring back all those positions. Do you want me to keep going? I can keep going. So before you tonight, you have a resolution, and we thought it would be good to kind of highlight the summary of that resolution before we go in. So that resolution directs the treasurer and superintendent to consider or to put in place the following actions if the levy were not successful. So there would be immediate reduction of school resource officers. We talked at the last meeting, or there are some guidelines with the time frame, and we would follow those guidelines of our contract, but that would happen effective this school year. So probably before December. Also, there would be an increase of pay to participate fees for athletic and extracurricular activities to $770 per activity with no cap. And that would kick in for our winter sports season. So the levy is early in November. They're about a week in session, but it would impact that winter and into the spring and following after that. Additionally, we would look at reducing staff, and we're going to talk about that in the next slide, but we don't want to disrupt the educational process. So the reductions we're talking about would be effective for the 25-26 school year. So if we're not successful in the fall, then we would offer RIF notices if needed for the 25-26 school year if we were unsuccessful. We would continue a hiring freeze as well, but only replace positions that we were required to do so by compliance or federal and state laws. So those reductions would include a reduction of, you're going to see the impact kind of to student on the left and what that looks like, and staff members on the right, and I'll kind of explain that. So reduction of art, reduction of music at the elementary level, elimination of our tech aides, and reduction of physical education. So the law does require physical access to kids in K through 8 for physical education and fine arts. So art and music are both considered a fine art. So students would still have access, but there's no definition of time or, how much or how often. So we would be looking to do a minimal framework of fine arts and PE in the elementary school, and then the elimination of tech aides. So when we move to intermediate, that same rule applies in the fine arts and PE. So you're going to see the same language here. So reduction of offerings of art and music, elimination of technology course for students, elimination of the STEM course, and reduction of PE offerings, as well as the elimination of the drama supplemental at intermediate level. The middle school reductions would include elimination of foreign language at the middle school. We currently offer Japanese and Spanish, so we'd be moving one Japanese teacher to the high school, but reducing 2 Spanish teachers. The elimination of family consumer science at the middle school, elimination of Fab Lab, the elimination of robotics, reduction of PE, so the same thing, there will still be access provided, but it would not look the same as they currently have. And then the elimination of a musical supplemental. At the high school, we'll do elimination of core content electives, which would equal 5.5 positions. This would include advanced placement courses, content electives, courses with enrollment of less than 20. Elimination of the Fab Lab, elimination of building aid, and elimination of supplementals for music, drama, CADSci, mock trial, and tech club. So after running through those, I'm sure that, like I said, we're going to finish where we started. There's no good contingency plan. This definitely highlights the importance of our November ask and for our community.
Anything else, Todd?
No, sorry,
I took his whole present.
nothing else for me.
And then that brings us, I guess, to my report. We had a community coffee. I'm pretty sure that Mr. Jermaine Ferguson was there. Is that true? And Matt? Good. Do you guys have anything to report on that, or
Yeah,
should you?
we had 2 residents come, and one asked some questions about our special education program. The other was providing information about Ballet Met, programming that could be provided to elementary schools.
Okay. And then we had a board work session this week, and we went over our self-evaluation, which was, again, Jermaine Ferguson and Mrs. Savage did an awesome job in presenting that for us and setting goals for next year. And I think we're on target for August to approve those at this point in time. So if there's anybody that has an addition or subtraction, they need to get a hold of these 2. But thank you, that was well done, well done. And that's it for my board report, president's report. And we're now on to student achievement report, which I think we're putting that toward the end also.
Yeah, I was going to allow Mr. Gallagher's presentation of the Ohio State testing data be our student achievement report.
Sure. And our legislative report, again, you've outdone yourself. I can't read it all in one evening.
I'm not going to read it all today.
Go ahead, Mr. Ferguson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, I'm not going to read this entirely, but obviously there's been a lot of activity at the State House. The State House ended their summer session sending Governor DeWine about 29 bills to review. All those bills are not being signed at the same time, which is probably a good thing because they have to be vetted. But before I get into that, I will just do some highlights. Part of the role of the legislative liaison is serving on the legislative platform committee with OSBA. We're going to meet next Saturday, August 3rd, and there's about 8 proposed amendments to our legislative platform. We vet those resolutions and move them forward to be considered by the full association at our Capitol Conference. I have access to them, but the way they were labeled, I didn't want to put them in this document. I just wanted, if you have any questions about what those amendments are, please let me know, and I'll be able to have those conversations with you guys. COSBA, an update for COSBA Advocacy Conference is going to be held in DC September 8th through the 10th. We did have a session with what we call it the FLAG group, the Federal Legislative Advocacy Group, in June to go over the overview of the expectations and the conference schedule. I did include COSBA's link and their platform for your consideration. We will be represented by 2 members of our congressional district, Vela King of Hillsdale Local Schools and Daryl Thomas of Urbana City Schools. Our congressional district, just as a fun fact, has 84 public school districts within our congressional district. I'm the alternate delegate, but at this time, my services are not needed in DC. But we have all 3 met, and we've strategized and selected some issues that we like to highlight in our in their legislative meetings. And those choices are to increase funding for K through 12 education with the emphasis on IDEA, mental health support for K through 12, and child nutrition programs. And there's already meetings scheduled, so they're doing a great job kind of getting this prepared ahead of time. Speaking of the governor signing bills, there are some education bills that I'd like to highlight. House Bill 2 provides $600 million in school construction and renovation funding that will be administered through the Ohio Facilities Construction Commission. So that's good news there. House Bill 47, which you've probably all seen it in the news, requires automated external defibrillators to be placed in every public and chartered non-public school. The Department of Health will develop a model emergency action plan for the use. Schools will have to adopt their emergency action plan and practice it at least quarterly. Schools also must train teachers, admin, coaches, and athletic trainers on how and when to use the AED. Municipalities will be required to have them placed at all sports and recreation locations, and also the school and club sport organizations. So your recreation or your club sports will have to have training to identify symptoms and warning signs of the sudden cardiac arrest for young athletes. And then DEW will be responsible for developing a system for violations to be reported. So that's probably something that we will see. Do we already have them in our schools? I'm not sure. We do. Okay. So
Yeah, they've been expensive to maintain, and but Kim's worked on that quite a bit.
perfect. So we have a leg up, but there might be some additional training requirements that we will have to comply with. House Bill 147 was passed into law. There's a lot in it. Please, it's really changes the education law regarding teacher licenses, hiring, conduct, professional development, a school event ticket pricing. It's a lot, but I'm not going to go through every piece. Just giving you a heads up. Senate Bill 29 amends some regulations around the student educational records and student data policy. Senate Bill 168, which was kind of known as the deregulation bill previously, there's 2 pages worth of changes that you can review at your own leisure. I'm not going to go in there, but it is very impactful to schools, negative or positive, I'm not going to say, but there's a lot in that bill to digest, and you can read it at your own leisure. On deck, so that means the governor is in his office, has not signed it, is House Bill 214. It will require public schools to adopt policies to give school districts, community schools, and STEM schools authority to offer an established character education program and require districts to adopt religious expression day policy, up to 3 days excuse absence per academic year for religious observation, holidays, or activities. Looking through my report to see if there's anything else. And this is not passed, but in the House Transportation Committee, they've heard House Bill 518, which would authorize a civil penalty related to drivers who illegally pass a school bus but cannot be identified. And so I know Board Member Smith has expressed and done some advocacy efforts in this area. So I just wanted to highlight that because we need to take a look at that. And it's also going to designate October as School Bus Safety Awareness Month, and this will be the School Bus Safety Act. So it's just been heard as in one committee. Obviously, it's July of the last year of the General Assembly, but something to look at. OSBA did submit testimony in support of Senate Bill 271. and I think this might be of interest to some of our residents here. Senate Bill 271 would authorize a refundable income tax credit. This is refundable by the state, a refundable income tax credit or rebate for homeowners and renters whose property taxes or a portion of their rent exceed 5% of their income. So I included the analysis of the bill, but pretty much it's considered like a circuit breaker. So if you cannot make more than $60,000 per year, and I think your home valuation is about $471,000 to qualify for this, but the state will refund if your values go up or your property tax go up more than 5%. So OSBA and some other associations did testify in support of this bill. I think this is it's helpful for those. We've talked to those residents who say they can't afford the consistent increases, and this might be another program that the state is funding, not local government, for the rebate. I will, the Joint Committee on Property Tax Review and Reform, they last met May 22nd. I haven't heard any updates from OSBA about the work of this committee, but just as a reminder, they are supposed to submit a report by December, and this is something we have to keep an eye on because this can change property taxes in Ohio in many different ways, and those could be good or bad. So that concludes my report if there's no other questions. Lastly, we did secure a meeting with Representative Richardson. I reached out to her office. We're going to meet next Friday just to give her an update about our levy ask and an update on our financial forecast, because her office does receive a lot of calls during campaign season and levy time, so we want to make sure we're doing our best to be proactive in that. Thank you.
Okay, and did you have a Safety and Drug Committee report also?
We've met with the Drug Free Coalition. There's going to be some changes in the upcoming year. We're doing strategic planning. That meeting occurred in July, early July. But outside of that, the only thing I would ask is maybe we'll talk about this in our policy committee meeting, but just start looking at and being aware of the cell phone policy other school districts are implementing. Just kind of start looking at what other school districts are doing, because that might be in our lap this upcoming year.
I do know that will be a focus with parent council on the safety group for the very first meeting. So good way to get feedback.
Okay. And with that, I need a motion to approve minutes from our previous meeting.
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we'll take a vote.
Yes.
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 Yes. And with that, we need Board of Education items. Recommend to approve a resolution of intent to participate in the Ohio Facilities Construction Commission Expedited Local Partnership Program. And I think that'll, do we have to have a separate one for the resolution of that also, or not?
Just one motion
For both? Yeah. Okay.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Been properly moved and seconded that we sign this resolution with the intent to participate in the Ohio Facilities Construction Commission. Hope there's some discussion on this.
Yeah, so we actually approved a resolution identical to this about a year ago. So the whole purpose of doing this is it puts us basically in line for state some state funding to help offset if we were to have to build a new building in the future. With this state funding program, you have to have a certain amount of funding that's coming locally. So signing up for this project now allows us to basically get credit for some of the PI projects that we're doing now. So for example, if we put a new roof on a building, we can get credit for that expenditure towards the local share of a new building project. The good part of it is it doesn't lock us in. If for whatever reason enrollment stopped growing and we didn't have to build a new building, then nothing gained, nothing lost. But it does benefit us in the long run to jump in now. No cost involved, anything like that.
So where does the funding for this program come from?
The state,
Just out of the general budget? or-
correct, yep.
I know we're currently doing our facilities plan and an enrollment projection study. Are any of those costs associated with this resolution?
No,
So it's a win-win.
yeah,
We can't-
absolutely.
Can't lose on this one. Any other discussion? All right, we're ready for a vote.
Mr. Ferguson,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes?
Mr. Keller,
Yes.
Ms. Savage,
Yes.
Mr. Keck.
Yes. And now we're up to the big resolution, recommend to approve resolution declaring it necessary for a tax levy and requesting that the county auditor to certify matters in connection with the proposed tax levy.
So moved?
Second.
Been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
So anytime you do a levy, there's two resolutions you have to do. The first one is the resolution of necessity that we did several months back. So this is the final resolution we need to do. I will then take that to the Board of Elections, and that would be the final step to putting that levy on the ballot for November 5th.
Any further discussion? Seeing none? Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. And we've got, this is the first of two levies that we're going to vote on. And I expect there will be a lot of discussion in the community about both of these. And
Levy resolutions.
Levy resolutions,
yeah,
you meant to say.
the
Yeah.
levy resolution, excuse me. And this vote, for me, is an easy one. I've been on the board for 11 years, and during that time, I know that this board and with other members and so forth, going back to when I first came on the board, have always tried to look at the 5-year forecast, extend it, manage our money well, and make sure that we do a good job in handling the public dollars. We've asked our superintendent and treasurer to work very carefully to make sure that we get value for every single dollar that we spend. And we have, I think, been very successful. It's been 15 years since we asked for a new levy. Our school district is ranked in the top 20% of schools in the state in terms of academic success of our students, academic achievement. We've been able to do that with less money than most school districts receive. We spend less money than most school districts spend. And somehow or another, we've been able to keep things together over this time. And maybe that is a problem. Maybe that's something that we need to think about a little bit. We've been so successful stretching dollars, using some very creative ideas to try and make the levy ask a year off, another year off, and so forth, that the community, at least some in the community, have gotten to the point where they expect us to be able to continue to operate without any additional money. And they've asked some interesting questions about it. Why can't you continue to duplicate what you've done? And inflation, which impacts the competition for teachers. Right now, we're in a teacher shortage, not just locally, but nationwide. And our salaries for our teachers, particularly the teachers that are the beginning teachers, are not competitive. School districts that we're adjacent to are going to be paying beginning teachers as much as, potentially as much as $5,000 or $6,000 more than what we are, starting almost immediately. That is not where our district, in my opinion, needs to be. We have some that said, well, you know, and Todd in his presentation, when he shows the graph and the contingency, the carryover, I had to go back and look. It's labeled the unreserved cash balance. And I think it's important to say that this is not extra money. This is not money for which there is no purpose. This is money that, while it is unreserved, is scheduled in the 5-year forecast to be spent. And we will use every single dollar of that money. And some have said, well, why don't you've got money today, you just run the school, do whatever. And every dollar that we spend today is going to have to be replaced by a new tax dollar almost immediately. The unrestricted cash balance allows us to stretch our spending out over a period of time. And so it is not a slush fund. It's not money that we've stockpiled. And I would point out that back, and I'm going to say about 2008, and Todd, you may know how low we got, but I understood we got down to the point where there wasn't much cash at all at the end of the year, relatively next to nothing. And it has taken us from 2008 until today to be able to slowly and methodically build up a fund of money that allows us to stretch our expenditures out over time. Now, I looked, and if you hear people say, well, you need to run your budget like we have to in our household. So I said, okay. So I looked, and a household budget ought to include 3 to 6 months of emergency funds, preferably more. And when you read the articles on it, they say, try to get $1,000 in a savings account for your emergencies. That can be hard for a lot of people, but you really need to try to build so that you get 3 to 6 months, so that if car needs a repair, something goes wrong in the house, medical expense, you've got some cash that doesn't create a crisis for you. Now, what we're targeting is 1 month. We currently have about 4.5 months or so. So we're within what they say a family should have, 3 to 6 months. We're kind of right smack in the middle of it. And we're looking 5 years out and saying we're going to have 1 month that would be available to us, unreserved, that we would be able to use to cover emergency situations that arise. So, as you look at that and you consider, because I need to make another point. I know Diane and I've had a couple of conversations, and the point of the conversation was to suggest to her that when somebody left our district, we didn't just automatically fill that slot. When we decided we needed to build a new football field, I went to her and I said, I want you not to just replace what we have. I want you to look at this area we have behind Bunsold and outside the high school and what's now the early college, and reimagine, what are the possibilities there? How can we better utilize that facility, that space, to be able to do things for more kids? And we have some of the finest athletic facilities in the state of Ohio for our kids. And it is certainly a point of pride. Well, the same thing, I believe, goes with human resources. And I can tell you, for over the last 11 years, we have not hired anyone to this district that was just filling a previous position. Every single slot was looked at and evaluated. Is this a position that needs to be filled? Is there a different way of taking our administrators and reorganizing them and be able to redo the jobs that people are doing and get everything done so that we don't have extra personnel? We don't have extra human capital in our school district. And we don't. We don't have places to save money. We started this, I can remember 3 or 4 years ago, Todd telling us there is no way we can reduce spending and solve the financial problem facing this school district. And we have seen some things happen, but Todd has been, absolutely right on with this. I will deviate just a bit here in that some people say, well, you put a levy on last May, or a year ago, and it went down. And then all of a sudden, you had plenty of money. The timeline for that, I was thinking about today, we started in September, October, looking at where we needed to be. In January, February, we had to make a decision what the levy request was going to be and start the process that we were involved in and we're involved in right now with this. And we made the decisions based on the information that we had. Now, it was the end of a state biennium budget. So in May, voters turn down the levy, and lo and behold, I did want to say, all of the money that we were going to receive from the state, we received for that year, we already had. So we knew how much money the state was going to give us. What we didn't know was what was going to happen on July 1. Well, July 1, the state says, we're going to give you $3.5 million more. Now, one person on social media noted that somehow or another we found all this millions of dollars. Well, when you're on a board of education, you can't consider what might happen. The only things you consider are what you've got in your pocket at the time and what you know is coming, absolutely, certified, guaranteed, you're going to get it. And none of us knew what the state was going to do over the next couple of years, because they didn't seriously start talking about it until June, after our levy was already down. Now that was good news for our district, probably the best news we'd had in a while. And it did allow us to make some new decisions to try and stretch the dollars as far as we could, but we still have to be fiscally responsible, because every dollar we spend is a new dollar we have to generate with a tax. Now, there's an old slogan or statement that says, when you reach the bottom of the hole, stop digging. And our community, if I talk about our school and our community, we've gotten about to the bottom of the hole. And it's time for us to start digging stop digging deeper into fiscal catastrophe. And there is no good way out. We're going to have to work. We're going to have to pay for our schools. The state has a funding method that says they will provide some money, but there's an expectation that we come up with money. And 600 school districts in the state of Ohio, or something close to that, their communities put forth a greater effort than what we do. Okay, and so we've kind of reached the bottom of the hole, and we got to stop digging, because if we continue to dig deeper and deeper holes, it's going to cost more and more money, and it's going to be harder and harder for us to work out of the situation that we're in. And the only way out of the hole is to have additional revenue. And so this resolution to put this tax levy is one that I'm happy to vote for, because this is going to stop us from going deeper in the hole, and it's going to get us turned around and put us on not great footing, but at least we're going to be able to peek over the edge of the hole and see a future. Thank you.
Dick, just since you looked at me like I might know the 2008 ending cash balance off the top of my head, I did look. So it was $1.7 million, which equated to about 12 days of cash on hand, 12 days worth of expenditures. And it's worth noting that it wasn't long after that that we experienced catastrophic cuts to the district.
Yep. Thank you, Todd.
Anybody else? I would just like to say thank you, Dick, for putting all that together, because a lot of that is very important. I would guess I'd like to add to that, you know, as we pass a tax levy, day one, that money begins to decline, you know, in real dollars. And, you know, thanks to House Bill 920, thanks to inflation, that those real dollars tend to go downhill. And so, you know, it really hurts me when people, intelligent people, come up to me and say, well, there's always more places that you can save money, but we're down to a point now where, you know, we're talking about positions, and lots of positions in order to save money. There's just, you can't dim the lights any further and still do that. And then the other thing that I'd say, and I think you alluded to it, is that do we really want to be the lowest cost district in the state of Ohio and see the results that we're going to get from that? I do think Mr. Gallagher is going to present some pretty impressive results considering where we're at tonight, but that's not going to continue forever as we continue to subtract teachers and good teachers from the payroll. So with that, I'd like to just say one more thing. Education is expensive, and not educating people is even more expensive. And some great people have said that over the course of history, but it is very, very true. It's very expensive. Think about it in your own house. You know, maybe you decided to do a project that you weren't qualified to do, and you learned the hard way that it was very expensive maybe to change your oil and forget to put the oil drain plug back in. Just as an example. The next time you change oil, you're educated, but that was an expensive mistake. And, you know, we don't want to get to the point where we see declining results on a state report card, because then it's too late. The damage is already done. So that's my 2 cents worth on it. And I'm supporting it. So is there any other discussion? Okay, we're ready for a vote.
Yes?
Yes.
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 Yes. And that takes us to, let's see here, I'm lost. 9.3, which is a resolution, I believe, isn't it? For, let's see here if I can read this directly. Recommend a resolution declaring it necessary, nope, that's the wrong one, to implement resolution directing the superintendent treasurer to implement the contingency plan on the November 5th failure. And need a motion for that at this point in time.
Just a correction. It's not a November 5th failure. It's if it fails.
Right, if there's a November 5th failure.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded that we approve the motion or the resolution directing the superintendent and treasurer to implement the contingency plan if the November 5th failure. Is there anyone that would like me to read that resolution at this point? It was in your presentation, I believe, almost word for word. Is there any discussion? Mr. Smith.
Well, I had something to say on the first big resolution, so I've got something on the second one. This is a second vote. It's one where I will say yes, but it's one where I wish I could say no. This is a heart-wrenching decision for me. My life has been in education. My life has been helping kids and raising kids up. And the consequences of this resolution, if the actions are put into place, I think are devastating. As in the book of Revelations, I think we're facing the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. Now, we're not facing conquest, war, famine, and death, but we are facing inflation, mandates, impoverishment, and growth. So how do we balance a 5-year forecast where we don't have sufficient funds? And the only solution is to make cuts. We can't continue to spend at the levels that we have been spending at. And so I really did sit down and ask myself, which is more important, foreign language or art? Is graphic art more important than music? How do you provide time for our youngest students to burn off energy if elementary art, physical education, and music are not offered? What is the impact of the elimination of elective classes on career education? How many students are too many in a classroom? How do we attract and retain teachers if we're eliminating teaching positions? Are AP classes necessary, or are students just as well off without them? How important are extracurricular sports and activities to the life and the character development of our students? Exactly how many people do we need in an elementary office to greet parents, to get tissues for a runny nose, track attendance, deal with a sick kid, respond to a request from a teacher, run an errand for the principal, find the custodian, get a forgotten lunch to room 203, and always be available to answer the phone when somebody calls to ask, could you get a message to my child? And I don't have an answer. I don't want to make any cuts. I don't think as a community we can afford the cuts. My education began in the 50s, and in the 50s, memorization was the basis for public school education. You memorize numbers, you memorize how to, 2 plus 2, 3 plus 3. You didn't figure it out, you just memorized it. You memorize sections of books, and you memorize poems, and you memorize dates and events in history. With Google, AI, Siri, you just don't have to remember as much. There are places where you can go and you can get answers. So today, our district is tasked with teaching our current students and future students to be future ready. And in our website, which was redone over the summer and is much friendlier and more accessible, I've gone, looked for stuff, and it's easier. We say there that every learner will graduate from MVSD with an educational experience rich in opportunities to perform with mastery on each critical learning target and beyond. Equally as important, graduates will have the ability to think critically and become cognitively versatile. Learners will be challenged to think deeply and strategically, collaboratively and individually. Students will be challenged to extend and enrich their learning while making the relevant community broader world connections. Graduates will develop their soft skills and become advocates for their needs, responsible, self-sufficient, innovative problem solvers, creatively ambitious, and socially empathetic. Now, staring at that and looking or reading that and looking at our contingency plan, if we're to continue to meet this standard, to offer educational opportunities that our children need and deserve, to avoid sending our youth out in the world ill-prepared, we need additional money. I don't want to make any cuts. I want to increase academic opportunity for our students. As such, our goal stated before requires us to teach students to adapt and continue to learn, to have grit, determination, to be mentally agile, as opposed to remembering the facts, dates, names, and places that I memorized. That education is long over. The one certainty from this understanding is that educational endeavors will cease to be just one stage of life. Instead, people will, of necessity, be continually refreshing and renewing their knowledge with and in anticipation of developments in industry, society, and the world. I'm going to vote yes to make all of these cuts for the contingency plan, to make drastic, apocalyptic cuts and reductions in spending that are necessary to balance our 5-year forecast. I'm aware that we may need to change our pledge to the students as to having them prepared for the future. We may not be in a position to be able to do that if we have to initiate these cuts. Lower expectations for our students' success, set goals to attain mediocrity. When I think of these things as this vote occurs, I really want to scream no.
As we were saying before, there is no good contingency plan. And I hope, I know this is going to be out tomorrow, and staff and everybody's going to reflect on this, and they're going to say, well, I'm on that contingency plan, and the school board doesn't respect what I'm doing, and I got to assure you that it couldn't be any further from that. There's no place that we can cut, that we can say, well, that area isn't upholding what we want for our school district. And, you know, I kind of, Dick was reflecting on his education. I'm going to reflect on my time at Marysville. You know, 30-some years ago, I traveled halfway across the United States and ran into people who had heard positive things about Marysville school system. And at different universities over the years, same thing. We had a principal who went to an aircraft carrier and ran into, you know, someone who was working on F-16s, was a graduate from Marysville High School. And so, you know, we've got graduates all over the place now, and it's almost impossible to not take a trip and run into someone with a positive effect from here. And it's really disturbing that we would consider not funding those programs into the future, considering our past track record at this point in time. So while I don't like this contingency plan at all either, and I don't think any board member up here does, we spent a lot of time looking at it, and it's not fun to do. And you're constantly weighing one activity and program against another, and there's no good way to do that. So with that being said, is there any other discussion?
I do. I was gonna.
Sure.
I don't have a eloquent speech prepared, but I did.
I don't either.
I do want to maybe share two stories before and give some comments here. Some of you know I served in Okinawa, Japan, in the United States Marine Corps. It was I came out of the Marine Corps. I was visiting my brother in Columbus. At Eastland Mall, of all places, we were walking out, and I noticed there was a former Marine that I served with and his family walking into Eastland Mall. Crazy, bizarre experience. Hey, what are you guys doing here? He says, well, I'm retiring from the Marine Corps next year, and I'm going to be attending The Ohio State University, and we're looking for a community to move to here in Central Ohio. What areas are you looking at? Reynoldsburg, Pickerington, Gahanna. And I said, well, you should check out Marysville. Quality schools, because he has young kids, low taxes, and a great place to live. With this levy today that we are experiencing, we're putting forth tonight, we can still provide quality schools and in Central Ohio, low taxes. The story turns out the next couple of days, I went to Applebee's with my mom. Guess who walks in? Him and his family. Well, now, this family moved to Marysville. One of their kids have graduated from high school. The wife is an employee of this school district. He's graduated. He's doing his engineering career. And the other student is having a great time and successful career in high school. The quality of our schools influences the quality of the residents that are attracted to our community. Let me say that again. The quality of our schools influences the quality of the residents that are attracted to our community. And so when we look at the path forward, this contingency plan is a consequence of a decision that the community can make. It is not something that this board necessarily, we actually do not want to do. When I came on the board, one of my novice goals were, let's see how we can reduce class sizes at the elementary level. Let's see how we can reduce barriers to extracurricular activities for our students. I'll share another story. There was once a kid in our school district who entered high school credit deficient from an abusive household, no real sense of community in our district, who got plugged in with a great foster family and at a great school, Marysville High School, gets involved on the Marysville football team, has no clue what football is, about wears sunglasses, and the coach calls him LL Cool J. That's how this student started off. Second season was, which was a good experience, but the first experience of someone joining a community, joining a team, understanding how it is to be a part of a one mission team. Wrestling season comes around, JV match in New Albany. This kid gets his first win in life, pins the guy in the first match. Moves on, the story goes, takes college credit, or college prepared courses, attends Mr. Dick's AP government classes, kind of fails it, but had the access to take AP government. He had the access to try and aim high, despite the achievement or the lack of thereof in that course. He had the chance. Senior year, becomes track captain of the team, still a 3-sport athlete, and becomes a scholar athlete for the first time. Now, this student is me. Obviously, I'm telling the story a little bit here. It's my life, but it's because of this district and the opportunities that this district provided that student that influenced the direction of my life. If extracurricular barrier was high, I would never have joined the football team. May have never got to be the captain of the track team. May have never had the core group of friends that I formed because of athletics. Athletics is not just extra. It's a part of the learning experience. It's part of the culture that we give to our students. It's about opportunity. Again, the quality of our schools dictates the quality of the residents we attract and that retain. It also gives the opportunity or dictates the quality of the students that we send out to the world. And it's important that we have to know that this contingency plan is not a threat. When you say the district has money or they're not spending correctly, this is not a threat. We have consequences in life. And right now, we have increased enrollment. We have increased needs for different students. We have real needs that we've spent over 2 years attempting to justify to our community. And I like to say I'm a fiscal conservative person. And I'm not always the yes vote on this board, but I support this levy because we need it. And just to look at this levy can even bring back the 17 positions that we already reduced, and we're a growing district. This is a bare bones need that we are trying to accomplish. These are not threats, these are consequences. However, there is hope. The hope is in our community. The hope is the members of our community that can look at our finances, can ask the questions, and can make the question is, what kind of community do you want to live in? Do you want to have a high quality school district, great property values, and attracting great residents and teachers? Or do you want us to go into decline? Again, these are not threats. These are two different realities that we must face as a community, and we must make the decision together of which direction do we choose moving forward. And so we must adopt a contingency plan, and there is no great contingency plan, but this is something in our responsibility to tell you and to be clear-eyed and say, if we cannot achieve new revenue, we have to make reductions to be fiscally responsible. Because if we chose to do nothing, the state will make these decisions for us eventually. And you'd rather have your local elected representatives doing our best to earn your trust and to serve with our students' best interest in mind. This contingency plan is not in our best students' interest. It's not in your best interest, the community's. It's not. But these are the consequences if we fail. And I have hope. This is not the final picture, but it's our conversation, it's our community, and it's our decision. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Okay, we're ready for a vote.
I was going to say
sorry.
something, Bill. As this comes from 21 years in education and being a parent, kids learn to accept what's presented to them. It drastically affects or can and will, their well-being and experience in school. Like I think of our 430 kindergartners coming in and what school could feel like with these cuts in place. Kids don't know what they don't know or what they have not experienced. And it's time for the adults in our community to step up and support this so that our kids can have these experiences.
Just one quick thing. My kids are a little bit older, but I was here when they had to make cuts before, and it devastated our school district. I'm sorry, but it was devastating to our school district, and our community needs to be aware of the consequences of not supporting this levy and understanding the need of the district.
Okay. We're ready for a vote now.
Yes.
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 Yes?
Yes. And now we're on to treasurer CFO items. We need a motion to recommend all of these items be approved. Or
So moved.
is there a second?
I'll second.
Is there any discussion on these items?
Just a couple highlights I'll bring up. We had some good news on the appropriations, so you'll see a new grant on there of $162,000. I'm sure you're well aware the state mandating certain changes in curriculum. So while this is a new grant, they're also forcing new expenditures. So it's pretty much an offset. But it's a good news that doesn't have to come out of our general fund tax dollars. So that will help offset those expenditures that we have to make. Also highlight on the other items, some of those donations. You'll see some large amounts. Those were not large amounts we got all at once. Those are donations that we've kind of received periodically, so we're just approving those all at once at the end of the year, kind of combined. So the large $39,000 donation from Nippon Express, we use that for additional staffing for our English learner program. And then quite a few donations from the Mental Health and Recovery Board. The largest chunk of that is for some employee wellness initiatives that we're doing. That was one of the larger, higher priorities that our staff noted that they would like to see us improve. So one of the things we're working on.
Any other discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Mr. Ferguson?
Yes.
Mr. Keller?
Yes.
Ms. Savage?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes?
Mr. Keck?
Yes. And with that, we need a motion to recommend the approval of human resource items to be included in the action item above superintendent's items, all of them.
So moved?
Is there a second?
Second.
Been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on that?
I just wanted to highlight two things. You're going to see science of reading training. The State Department is, that's a reimbursement. So we're trying to get some language in. So as our teachers finish that training, the payment can be made, but all that will be reimbursed through the state. And then also you're going to see on the supplemental list, and I kind of want to go on the record and clear up a little rumor mill. There are several positions on supplementals that are marked donations. The district is able to provide, to pick up the supplemental contracts this fall and transportation this fall as a result of donations. No operating dollars are going towards those. Those are through donations and sponsorships that we've acquired. Mr. Smith talked about one last month that we received, but those are all paid for through donations and sponsorships to the district. It's not sustainable, and it would be for just the fall.
So we need more donations for next year. Correct.
Okay. Any other discussion?
It's just one question for our superintendent. We've just passed a resolution with contingencies. How will that impact our human resources, our hiring? What do you see with that?
Great question. So hiring season for education now starts, well, probably even this fall, but definitely starts actively in February. So as your contingency plan is laid out, those are effective for next school year. So I would assume that we will have several staff members looking for positions in other districts starting in the spring. So I think kind of that lag time, knowing they're coming into 25, 26, they will be investigating other opportunities, unfortunately.
Thank you.
Okay, we're ready for a vote?
Yes.
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 Yes. And that leaves us with Mr. Gallagher at this point in time. We've left you 5 minutes.
I always forget I have the clicker up here now. Good evening. I will be providing an update on our state testing performance through this spring and give you a preview of what some of the indicators on our local report card are likely to look like in the upcoming, or going into this fall, into September. Oops. Oh, I'm watching my computer screen. I'm so sorry. I got two things going at once here. Yeah. So I'll take us through an executive summary of Marysville Schools' performance. So very, very high level district performance. I'll take a look at a couple individual school indicators. So we'll get a look at some individual schools, how we did with achievement overall, and then how we did with the gap closing component on the local report card. So overall, we are currently projected to gain half of a star going into this fall on our overall rating. And that will be predominantly driven by our performance in early literacy, which is another indicator you'll see we are projected to grow an entire star in early literacy due to the work that we've undertaken this year. We'll just continue to be buoyed as we begin our curriculum adoption for language arts in the upcoming school year. In terms of achievement on that particular component, we're projected to receive 4 stars again. We actually saw continued improvement in 11 of our 20 tested areas, and we actually saw significant improvement in high school mathematics. And that was held down by some stronger growth in algebra and geometry at Marysville High School. And gap closing will continue to have 5 stars. That's an absolute point of pride for this district. We do an exceptional job addressing the needs of our marginalized students from various subgroups. We're doing a good job of addressing chronic absenteeism, but we do have some needs in that particular area, which I'll talk about a little bit later. And we are meeting English learner progress targets, which is helping us substantially. So we do a great job with our English learners, and we do a great job with our graduation rate as well on the 4-year and 5-year. And then, and that's down below. In ELA, or early literacy, I should say, we will gain that entire star, and that was driven predominantly by a 10% improvement in our off-track to on-track percentages. So that is very substantive, and it was also improved substantially by our grade 3 ELA performance, which you'll see momentarily. Just a couple final notes. You will see some asterisks throughout this presentation. Those typically denote that data is still being processed and cleaned up on the state side. So for example, final promotion to 4th grade data will not be submitted or finalized by the state of Ohio until on or before September 2nd. So that'll be the earliest the state finalizes that data on their side of the house. And then progress or value-added data will not be updated until mid-September. A date has not been announced there. And then we'll see final local report cards released sometime in mid-September. Again, when I last checked, there wasn't a date announced just quite yet, but typically it comes out mid-September every year. Okay, let's take a look at schools. Within the K-6 space, we continue to have very strong performance, especially in achievement and gap closing. We have an array of schools. Every single school has 4- or 5-star performance with regards to achievement and gap closing. So great performance in our elementaries. And then in 7 through 12, we saw improvement. But actually, there should be actually, no, I take that back. On the overall rating for MHS, I don't have it here. They're currently projected to have a 1/2 star improvement overall, and that's definitely being carried by the achievement component and their gap closing components from the current school year. And we continue to have strong performance at Creekview, Bunsold, and Marysville Early College High School. Just one thing I will note with gap closing. We did experience some difficulties in this particular space, in that 7 through 12 space, with chronic absenteeism. If you're not familiar with it, chronic absenteeism is measured by the percentage of time a student is out of school, regardless of whether it's excused or unexcused, things like that. And the threshold for the state is 10%. So if you look at the entire school calendar, once a student goes over roughly 18 days of being out of school, that would trip that indicator. What I will say is this has become an area of focus for us district-wide, not just within this space, for the upcoming school year. So we're going to get that taken care of. With regards to the language arts, we continue to have strong ELA performance. We, especially in 5 of our 7 grade levels, we're at or over, or at near or over 80% performance in terms of proficiency. So that's pretty strong performance, but we do need some improvements in grades 6 and 8. But the good news is that overall across the board, we're going to be buoyed by our implementation of the ELA curriculum in the upcoming school year and professional learning that we're going to be doing on disciplinary literacy in that 7 through 12 space. So we're going to continue doing what we do, right? We have a strong track record in language arts, so we're going to get, continued performance across the board, and we're going to work on improving the areas where we still have some weaknesses. With regards to mathematics, we kind of have this mix of improvement and marginal change. Math definitely improved, without question, but it continues to be our greatest area of need overall. And it really starts with our adoption of high-quality instructional materials that are aligned and designed to prepare students for high school mathematics, particularly Algebra 1 and geometry. And this work is in progress, so we're already underway with that particular work. And I just want to point out again, this is the first time in several years we've seen greater than 80% performance in Algebra 1. And again, that was absolutely locked down by performance improvements at Marysville High School. We saw some substantive improvement as well with geometry. And again, MHS helped us out there as well. In science and social studies, we have this mix of marginal improvement and regression with some substantive regression within the 8th grade at Bunsold Middle School. But what I will say is we're already at work with our team at Bunsold Middle School in order to refine and improve our instructional practices when it comes to science. So that's already an area of focus for that team, and we'll be supporting them with that work through the upcoming school year. Okay, let's talk annual measurable objectives. So these are parts of the gap closing component. So as if having components isn't complex enough, we have subcomponents within the components. Annual measurable objectives are one of those subcomponents of gap closing. And how this is measured by the state is Ohio has particular targets in terms of performance index point performance for various subgroups. And they're looking to see if school districts are able to meet or beat those targets each year. And those targets increase annually, so they're not stagnant, they continue to increase over time. And I was here a year ago and I got to say it then, I'm going to say it again now. We beat every single one of those targets established by the state of Ohio for every single one of our subgroups in language arts. It's without a question a strength of our teaching personnel in this district at large is how we support all learners across the board. One area that I'm keeping an eye on is our English learners. Again, it's an area of strength for us. We're getting a little close to that target, in my opinion, right? So we can always do better, and so we're going to continue to find innovative ways in order to support our English learners as we move forward into the upcoming school year with regards to language arts. In mathematics, we continue to meet all of our annual measurable objective targets in mathematics. Again, so another area of strength in this district. And like I just mentioned, gap closing at large is a point of pride for us across the board. And again, just like I had mentioned with ELA, we need to continue, even though we met our English learner targets for annual measurable objectives, we continue to need to develop and implement innovative strategies and practices and methods for supporting our English learners. All right, this last slide. So this is actually our executive summary from 2016. So we got to get in the way back when machine a little bit. And as an organization, we've come a really long way in the last 8 years through a global pandemic, community growth, changing demographics, the diverse needs of our children that we serve, and yet we continue to persevere and improve the education that our children receive through our focus on offering a personalized learning experience through the Marysville Guarantee. And while we have not arrived, we are beginning to experience the fruits of our work. And so just I always, this is something I like to show other organizations when I talk with them or when I take kind of our story on the road. It was 8 years ago we had an F for gap closing, and we're 5 stars. We repeatedly 5 stars, just in terms of how we support young people across the entire expanse of this organization. And that is something we should be extremely proud of. The same with K through 3 literacy. We received a D 8 years ago, and we're looking at having 4 stars going into the upcoming school year in September. And we have strong performance across the board in achievement. So we've done amazing things in this organization over the last 8 years, and quite frankly, our work's not done though. So that's what I had for this evening.
Very impressive.
Thank you.
I thought so when I looked at it earlier today. I thought that good news.
I mean, this is an annual presentation, and you've come in over the last 8 years, and every single year, I know we had hit a bump or two around COVID, but it's one of the things that makes me extremely proud is that this school district teaches every single child, and we work at not losing a single one. And that is a remarkable accomplishment. It speaks to the dedication and professionalism. I think in many ways it speaks to the willingness of our teachers to change and to accept criticism in a positive way, that the results, you've been teaching this class for a while, and here are the results, and they need to be better. And so teachers have gotten better. And they have done so with apparent enthusiasm because they're able to keep up constant reevaluation, constant reassessment, constant personal and other types of appropriate critique, and move the needle even higher. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank all the teachers.
What's the context around 2016? Is that when we switched to mastery learning? I don't know.
It's the furthest back in time I was able to capture an entire school report card. Okay. Yeah.
But that's really when we started down that path.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So last year we talked about math being like the #1 at the high school, there's been significant growth. Are you able to share any insights to how that was accomplished?
I think one of the big factors that influence that is kind of switching veteran teachers to work with some of the most novice learners. And so we took veteran teachers, put them at Algebra 1, really, I think, enriched our data system and data review and assessment system. I would tell you Mr. Chafin still isn't happy, right, and still wants to see continued growth there, but just a very targeted approach and constant review of student data.
I do have a follow-up. It looks like for the 8th grade, are there any, the 8th grade, it looks like in all the areas that were reported, there was a drop from last year to this year. Is that tied to like the contingency plan that was implemented, or is there any details that the board should be aware of for?
Let me take that too. We did have a lot of shifting staff in Bunzled last year, and some teacher movement. I think that Michelle's got some redirection happening there. She's really been over it all year and kind of anticipated some drops. The one thing I would tell you to remember when you look at that data, it's the same as last year, but also understand math students who are in Algebra 1 in 8th grade aren't represented in that data set. They are represented in another data set. So still, we need to do better in that regard, but understand that's not a collective snapshot of entire 8th grade.
Understood. I just wanted to ask the question, but yeah, I really appreciate the presentation, the direction our district's we're at right now, and I hope we can continue that moving forward.
Mm-hmm. Anything else?
I just am curious how the principal teacher data review, like what that will look like. Because when I look at this data, it's outstanding, but there's also different ways I'm looking at it with a group of kids in a classroom as 4th graders and how they perform, and then in 5th grade how they perform, and then in 6th grade, what is that chronological, like who's performing well, who's not. And so I was kind of wondering what principal and teacher data review will look like.
Do you want it? Okay. Well, it's actually, I'm going to speak to the work we're going to start next week, if that's okay. Actually, the crux of all this begins with what our targets are as a building. So what are our goals when it comes to mathematics, literacy, future readiness, student wellness? That work kicks off next week. Those goals will then matriculate down into our individual school buildings where teachers, grade levels, teams, et cetera, will be working to meet those goals. So everything that we're going to be doing from this moment forward is going to be centered on how do we improve mathematics, how do we improve literacy, what does that look like in a teacher-based team setting, what are our goals going to be as a department moving forward, and building administration principals are involved in that at every step of the way, along with our instructional coaches as well.
I think too, Matt, we do work with principals, or we don't, principals work with teachers to really drill down now that we have better data sets to look for exactly what you're talking about. So what are the trends we are seeing with, Bobby? And what kind of interventions can we start day one? What kind of things can we do in tier 1 to address some things we already know about Bobby coming in the door? So maybe it's geometry, or, one of our biggest challenges really is around motto and reasoning across the district. So, what kind of things can we do in the classroom? More manipulatives, working with the district coach. Cassie is a rock star and has really been immersing herself into the teacher-based teams and the building-based teams on just that exact idea.
Thank you. I think they can learn from each other in that environment. Like fifth grade ELA teachers see, well, fourth grade did something amazing year after year with those kids. What can we do to replicate that?
Okay, we're on to comments, questions from the board members. Thank you very much, Mark. And we'll start down here this time with Mr. Ferguson.
Yeah, so I guess I will just do a couple. This last month has been very busy, it seems like for me. I did attend an OSBA Future of Education seminar, which was very insightful. They first start off with a presentation by Lieutenant Governor John Husted. He gave kind of his vision about education. Then we had like a Next Ready panel, representatives of Ohio Education and Workforce, Battelle for Kids, Ohio Excels, Ohio Association for Career and Technical Education, and then a staff member from Lakota Local Schools. They're kind of just looking at how do we prepare students for the workforce and tomorrow, kind of the similar work we're doing here. Nothing really to take away from that for this conversation. We had a frontline education presented just about how the school vouchers are impacting the state budget and some of the things to be aware of, and as we are talking to our legislators in the coming months and years. A presentation that I really appreciated was from Dr. Keith Bell, the Student Leadership, it's SLRC. It's about Student Voice Agency. So it's offered to Central Ohio school districts, at least in this presentation, and there are actual students who presented their research projects that they've done in their local school districts. They have a bridge to the Ohio State University so that they can continue their work at the university level as well. But it really, I never really, I guess, like when you talk about student voice and decision making, I was kind of lukewarm on the idea, but seeing it in action and hearing directly from these students how they were able to pick an item like mental health or a different problem that was happening in their district, study it, analyze it, and not just like a Google survey. No, like they actually looked at empirical data. They performed proposed solutions that they brought to their superintendent, and those superintendents were actually able to implement some of their changes and then continue that work. It was very impressive, and some of the students were extremely impressive. So just wanted to kind of share that. That was a key takeaway. Then we had a educators recruitment and intention presentation from Experience Management Institute, and they're talking about the total how to market your career opportunities, and things simply as using pictures, having being on social media, instead of saying classified, certified, actually like support, teacher, building, administrative, how to use your website to kind of market the jobs and connect. And also they recommended that the board know what is your recruitment and retention strategy for the year, and being aware of that. So it was a really impactful day. I didn't know going in, I didn't know what to expect, but kind of took away with my thoughts running and wanting to, I guess the biggest takeaway was really how do we involve student voice in our decision making. And I know that's a passion of our superintendent, but I'm kind of on board now and kind of fired up about how we can do something here in our district to include more student voice. So I'll leave my comments there.
Okay.
I'd just like to thank you for the presentation. It's always wonderful to see our student achievement presentation, and with our data heading in the correct direction. It's wonderful to hear, so thank you.
Matt?
Best of luck to our students and staff as they get ready to kick off the year, because next time we meet, school will be in session.
I want to thank all of you for being patient and letting me say what I felt like I needed to say. I want to acknowledge that I had to write stuff down because I would have sat here either yelling and screaming or crying. And so I appreciate your patience. We've got a great school. Mark gave a presentation that just shows what our teachers are capable of doing, and we know they're capable of more. And the focus tonight has been on the levy, and the levy supports our teachers. Our operating funds are 90% of the operating funds, 90% of the levy money is teacher salaries and benefits, staff, administrators, teachers, and we've got a great school. We need to keep a great school. So thank you very much.
And on that, I'd just like to say, we have a great school, but education is expensive, and we need to pay for it. Having said that, I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Been properly moved and seconded that we adjourn. No discussion on this. All those in favor?
Yes?
Yes.
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 Yes. We're done.